Welcome back everybody to another episode of our weekly Moto News Roundup, where this time round we'll look at Triumph's new Thruxton 400 for India, rumours on a new Bonneville and also some new Tigers, new colours for Kawasaki's Ninjas, the VERSYS 1100 and also Honda's X-ADV. Then we've got new products from Quadlock, more details of Enfield's highly anticipated Himalayan twin, Husqvarna are running a demo ride roadshow, KTM have updated their 690s, Moto GUZZI give us a peek inside their new factory, and we'll round off with the unfortunate news that it seems like Fantic are in a spot of bother. But let's kick off with that new Thruxton 400, which of course we've known about for some time now. We've seen plenty of spy shots over the past few months, but I gotta say in its finished production form it really does look rather good. Not that it's got a great deal in common with the now discontinued Thruxton 1200, but more so visually it looks like the Speed 400 upon which it is heavily based, but with a fairing on top that seems to have been massively inspired by that of the Speed Triple 1200 RR. Still, the result is very easy on the eye, and it's also helped by the fact that they've come up with a really nice selection of finishes. There's a red, a yellow as well, so a couple of nice punchy options, and then also a white, black and blue, and I think my pick of the bunch, the black with the silver and red accents, which to be fair does have a little bit of the look of the Thruxton RS from a few years back. Performance wise, well I don't think there are any massive surprises here. It's similar in terms of power to the other 400 singles. The brakes and suspension look fairly comparable as well, although they have made a couple of tweaks to the geometry, so it does sit a little bit lower I believe. It's also got a shorter wheelbase, and I believe that's owing to the fact that it's got a steeper steering angle. So yeah, I definitely expect it to handle in a fairly similar way to the Speed 400, which is certainly a good thing because I really enjoyed that bike when I reviewed it, but perhaps slightly quicker turning with a slightly more sporty and nimble feel. Beyond that though, the only other major change is the riding position with that clip-on style handlebar, so it's going to be much more aggressive than something like the Speed 400. But yeah, I'm unlikely to be able to comment on what it's like out on the road anytime soon because in the first instance anyway, it's just been launched for the Indian market. Regardless though, I'd fully expect Triumph to keep capitalizing on this 400 platform, which has sold really well for them so far, and one of the suggested applications could be a more classically styled version called the Bonneville 400. Or so this article claims anyway on Acco Drive, although I'm not sure they've quite got the name right there because I'd realistically expect Triumph to reserve the Bonneville name purely for bikes on the Bonneville twin engine platform. On top of that, I don't see a great deal of substantiation in this article. There's no patents or spy shots, or they haven't trademarked that name or anything, so this is definitely a maybe, but I would say it does make logical sense, and with Enfield selling so many classic 350s and bullet 350s, you've got to imagine it's at least been a consideration for Triumph. One thing though that is looking a bit more certain is a couple of new versions of the Tiger 900, with this piece on motorcycle.com reporting on some homologation filings that had just been published in Switzerland. They mention a Tiger 900 Alpine and a Tiger 900 Desert, both for 2026, and given that they've used these special editions in the past on the Tiger 1200s, well, it doesn't take a great deal of imagination to figure out what they might be. For the 1200s, the Alpine came in white, the khaki finish was for the Desert, and on top of that you got a special edition badge on it and also a few extras thrown into the deal like the quick shifter and the accessory Arrow exhaust system. So yeah, perhaps expect similar here, no fundamental changes to the mechanicals of the bike, but perhaps a couple of nice new finishes, and with these being homologated for 2026, I can't imagine that they're too far away from being announced. In fact, on top of that, we've got finishes galore this week with a whole bunch of new color options from Kawasaki. Last time round we covered their Z Naked lineup, but this week we've got the Ninja sports bikes and also the VERSYS 1100. So kicking off with the Ninjas, we've got the ZX4RR, which now comes in Kawasaki green with new graphics or a stealthy black and grey, and it's the same kind of options for the ZX6R and also the Ninja 650, so either green or a much more stealthy version, although the graphics do vary ever so slightly between those three bikes. The only one they've been a little bit more daring with is the Ninja 500, 1100. Now the base model comes in black, but pay a little more for the SE version, and you can either get it, of course, in lime green, but also this deep blue and red finish, which I think is, well, a nice refreshing change from the rest. I perhaps wish they'd been a little bit more daring with some of the other bikes. As for the VERSYS lineup though, well, there's already the 650 being announced a few weeks back in this kind of dark blue with orange accents, and just this week they've announced the same finish will be available, or roughly the same finish, for the 1100 version in its S-Spec and SE. I like that one a lot, but of course if you're a Kawasaki fan who likes their Kawasaki's in green, which I think is fair enough, then both the S and SE will also be available in this green and gold, which to be fair also looks pretty good as well. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of them down in the comments below. Moving on to Honda, we've got the X-ADV, which it has to be said, it is a bit of an unusual bike. It's kind of like a maxi scooter, but with the image of an adventure bike, but clearly it works because they sell absolutely boatloads of these out in Europe. My guess is that the, more rugged image makes it a bit more exciting to buy than your typical, fairly plain looking maxi scooter. And it seems like for 2026, they're leaning into that image even more with a few new color schemes. Now you've got the typical subdued Honda black, gray and white, but also the most eye-catching of the bunch, the tricolor finish, which it's got to be said bears more than a passing resemblance to the Africa Twin. Pretty much all of the press shots as well are of the bike kind of sliding around in the dirt as opposed to doing the city commute. And so one assumes this more adventure-y image is certainly doing the trick in terms of helping shift this particular bike in dealers. Next up, our partners over at Quadlock, who I believe make the best motorcycle foam mounts in the business. Well, they've got a few new products out that I was lucky enough to check out at their stand at Goodwood a few weeks back, and so I thought I'd fill you in on the latest. One is a new wireless charging head, which I've been lucky enough to test out for the past few weeks. It basically keeps your phone juiced up without having to plug it in, providing your phone supports wireless charging, of course. And the old one is very effective, but perhaps a little bit on the large side. And so they've managed to slim it down and make it look a lot more sleek. So if you want a cleaner finish in the cockpit, then this is certainly one to look at. And you could argue the same of their new wireless CarPlay adapter, which has also shrunk a little bit as well. Increasingly, we are seeing bikes coming out with CarPlay, so it's certainly worth a look, especially if you don't want to plug in every time you get on the bike. But the previous gen, which I actually use in my van, is a touch larger again, and so it's maybe a little bit difficult to hide somewhere on the bike, whereas this one goes straight into the USB slot and so should, again, look a lot more neat. On top of that, they've got a couple of new kind of lifestyle and car products as well, like the water bottle, which has an integrated quad lock mount in the top. Might seem like a bit of an odd combination, but actually when I saw that, I can see how it's quite practical to have a makeshift phone stand with you at all times, and also you could use it as a bit of a tripod for capturing quick videos, so certainly one I'll be looking to pick up. And then also a new cup holder mount for your car. Sometimes, like in my Mini, there's a lot of curved surfaces. It can be quite hard to get a good clean mount, but this one just goes in your cup holder and then has a sort of bendy arm so you can position the phone easily, and so perfect if you are struggling to use one of their existing car mounts. As always with the Quadlock stuff, there's a link down in the description so you can find the full details of all those products if anything catches your eye. Over at Royal Enfield though, well, there's a bit more information coming out about their upcoming twin-cylinder Himalayan adventure bike. You see there's a report over on MCN where they quote their head of design, Mark Wells, as saying it's without a shadow of a doubt the most asked for product at Royal Enfield. Whenever we talk to customers, whenever I do any kind of consumer research, the Himalayan Twin is everything. He then goes on to explain some of the development process, so worth a read if you're into your details on this particular bike, but then also says that we're well into the process. I'm not giving you a date, but it's more than an early prototype. We're moving towards production. In case case you're not familiar, this is expected to have a bit more power and capacity than the current 650 twins at 750cc, and also be a touch more road orientated than the current 450 Himalayan, with a slightly lower slung chassis and also a smaller 19-inch front wheel. So it could be a great bike to look at if you want something kind of soulful. It'll probably have that typical Enfield styling. It probably won't be super expensive, but could make for a decent kind of adventure tourer. Next up, Husqvarna have just announced their 801 Roadshow, which gives you the chance to demo their brilliant 801 Svartpillen and 801 Vippillens at a bunch of events that they've scheduled at different locations and dealers across Europe. There's a dedicated page on their website which lists all of the events, so do check it out if you've ever fancied throwing a leg over one, and I would say I'd wholeheartedly encourage it because I had a lot of fun on both those bikes when we actually got a chance to review them. On top of that, KTM just announced the full details of their update for their big 690 Enduro and 690 SMC-R, which we actually got a sneak peek of at ABR Festival a few weeks back, but we didn't get any of the, specifics in terms of the specs and also any of the pricing details. Plain to see though in that video on that bike that was on show were the changes to the cockpit with a new TFT dash, revised switchgear as well, through which you can manage cornering traction control and cornering ABS, along with a new slip control feature. Perhaps the big headline update though is the LC4 single-cylinder engine, which has gone through a series of changes, perhaps most importantly to make it Euro 5 Plus compliant, but they also say it's got a bit more performance now, and that makes it the most powerful single-cylinder engine currently in production. The previous gen, I believe, made around 74 horsepower. Now it's up to 78 horses, which, is fairly impressive for a single. And also they're able to make that claim because the Hypermotard 698 Mono from Ducati makes 77.5. So they've beaten it by just half a horsepower. So fair enough, it is the most powerful single on the market. Pricing comes in at 10.5 grand for both the Enduro and the SMC versions, and they say bikes will be available in dealers from September. From Austria though, over to Italy now. Moto GUZZI are currently undergoing a big redevelopment of their factory on the banks of Lake Como, and they recently published this video on their YouTube channel to give us a bit of a look at how it's going. I've got to say, they might not be the first manufacturer that you think of when it comes to having a bleeding edge facility. I mean, certainly the bikes are largely heritage inspired, but from what you can see in this video, it really does look like it's going to be bang up to date. They say as well they've based some of the materials and shapes on some of the design features of their motorcycles, so it really is an interesting looking building, but also it's been built with customer visits in mind. So there's a big piazza in the middle where you can wander around a bit, and also a new visitor center planned, which should be very good indeed. We were lucky enough actually to film a couple of years back a tour of the nearby MV Augusta factory, so I'd love to make a trip back to northern Italy there to shoot one of this new factory when it's up and running. On a more difficult note though, but also in Italy, it looks as though Fantic might be going through some financial struggles here, and so perhaps another victim coming up of the recent, challenges in the motorcycle industry. We've already seen this year a couple of companies in the UK like CCM and Mutt go out of business, but Fantic are also said to be 130 million euros in debt despite a relatively successful few years. One factor cited in this report on Visor Down is that they diversified into e-bikes, which went really well during COVID when lots of people were buying that sort of stuff. But now they've got a load of money tied up in unsold stock. Sounds familiar, because people eventually stopped buying them and the market didn't continue at that pace. The other angle though is kind of interesting. They're saying that potentially the whole saga at KTM, which saw them only pay back 30% of what they owed to some suppliers, has resulted in a lot of those suppliers demanding now payments up front. That means for smaller businesses like Fantic, it's really hard to get the funds together to keep producing stuff, especially if you've got a lot of money tied up in those unsold e-bikes. It would be a massive shame, in my opinion, to lose Fantic. I love the Caballero Scrambler style bikes. I think they look amazing. They're genuinely decent to ride off-road as well, and so they're quite unique, let's say, in the retro Scrambler market. So certainly from a selfish perspective of just enjoying riding their bikes, you know, I'm hoping they can find a way forward, but also you never want to hear of jobs going as well. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of this week's story, so do let me know down in the comments below. And again, I'll also put a playlist on the screen now of the videos from the past week, so you can catch up with them in case you missed them. It's 2 reviews, both by Tim, but with me chatting him through it. And it's the BSA Bantam, which is brand new. He absolutely loved that one, so click that one to find out why. And then also the 650 Scrambler, which was more of a mixed bag. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.